Hey y'all, I'm Allison Boyd with Boyd Grants, and I have been writing grants and doing this thing for over 20 years. So today we're going to talk about how to beat writer's block. And the crazy thing is writer's block is not just for someone who's new at writing or someone who's got minimum experience. Man, the writer's block can hit you at the worst time. So we're going to start with defining what writer's block is. By definition, it's not really about being lazy or not wanting to write. It's a real psychological barrier that many people face. And it's very common in high pressure writing, just like we live in, right? Where deadlines and the need for persuasive arguments heighten the difficulty. So, the definition is it's a condition where a writer is unable to produce new work or experiences a creative slowdown. It often happens during stressful situations, especially when faced with deadlines or feeling pressure to deliver. So in grant writing specifically, we struggle with writer's block because of the need for persuasive, detailed, and deadline-driven work. So what happens? Writer's block occurs because of stress, pressure, fear of failure, perfectionism, and feeling overwhelmed by the scope of a task. We as grant professionals often face these challenges due to the complexity of our projects. For example, we have to combine storytelling with the strict factual and budget information, and sometimes merging those two, the creative and the persuasive, can feel daunting. So, how does this have impact on our productivity? Writer's block can halt your progress and lead to procrastination. It can lead to missed internal deadlines, and it can lead to poorly written applications. It not only affects the writer, but it can also have a broader impact on your organization as a result of missed funding opportunities or just the internal stress that you carry when you come to work. Okay, so we have such a high stake environment and our deadlines are non-negotiable that I can guarantee you are going to come up against writer's block at some point in time in your life, right? And it's going to hit you when you're like, I've written this grant 100,000 times and I know and I have clear expectations of what we need to do. So, we are going to talk about some of the challenges that we live with, and then we're going to dig into some tips, okay? So, we have specific time frames that can be unforgiving, right? So we have to create work under in a finite environment. And due to the stress of that, writer's block can cause delays and it can cause us to have missed opportunities. It can also cause us to just have a lot of self doubt, and therefore you're not writing as well as you should. There are so many high stakes in grant writing. We have talked about this and we talk about this all the time. So, the outcome of our proposals that we write can determine the viability of crucial projects. It can be the difference between whether a program continues to run or it has to be shut down. So that is a lot of pressure for the person who is compiling all of the program information and everything else to make sure that things are perfect and we're able to apply. That is that is essentially a high stakes environment. We have another challenge, and that's the complexity of merging the creative and the persuasive. So we've got to be able to stay within specific guidelines. We have specific data analysis components that we have to know about. We have to tell a story. We have to be compelling. We have to um, make sure everyone is learning everything they need along the way in what we write. Well, all of that exasperates the feelings of writer's block. So now that we know like what gets us there, let's talk about our three tips. We're going to quickly dive in to these tips. The first one is lean on your outline. The second is a change in location. And the third is just pick a section and write it anyway. Okay, so leaning in on your outline. What does that look like? So for me, an effective grant writing process is having a outline that helps relieve the stress and the pressure of bouncing back and forth between documents and figuring out what I need to say, where I need to say it. Are things going to overlap along the way? So, how do you create that outline? For my team, it's the simple step of creating a Word template document based off of the RFP or the funding guidelines of what is expected from the funder. In federal and government grants in general, it's pretty easy. We pull it directly off of the selection review criteria. So, what are the things that I'm going to have to be judged on for what I'm writing? And then the funding guidelines from a foundation often tells you the same thing, just worded differently, the different questions. And so everything we write as a team is based off of the driving factors of the RFP or the funding guidelines. And then we jump into that and it relieves the pressure of what am I supposed to say and where am I supposed to say it? Changing locations. We don't realize the impact that your location can have on the environment in that you're writing. So there are studies that show there there are studies that show that there's a psychological impact of where you are physically sitting to do your work. Moving to a new space can effectively reduce mental fatigue. For instance, if we stay in the same environment for an extended period of time, our minds can become cluttered and lethargic, just like our desks often become. So, a change in scenery also allows us to reset and recharge. So, how do you do that? For me, it's going to take a walking break. It's also going to sit out on my back deck and write instead of writing in my office. Um, I am a nature person. I get fulfilled from that nature. So I will change my environment and sit outside if it's feasible. Going somewhere else will allow you to recharge your creativity and your mental energy and effectively reset and get yourself out of that writer's block. The next piece is pick a section and write it anyway. This feels common sense, right? But sometimes the only way that you can break out of your writer's block is to break free from the hang up of I don't know where to start. Pick a section. I know people who pick the section they like the least and they start there and then it's over with and then they can start over. And also, your first attempt at writing doesn't have to be perfect. It's building that momentum whenever you start writing. And so, what does that mean? It means motivation follows action. And in order to actually keep moving, we need to get started. So once you get started, you continue to move. There are all kinds of amazing studies that support this. But the act of being motivated to do something has a dopamine release. It gives you cognitive dissonance and it creates a habit. So, action preceding motivation initiates you to continue to move forward with your writing. Okay, so now we are going to talk really quick about being flexible in grant writing. So your what we have to respond to does not change, but how we respond to things is what is going to change and eliminate some of that writer's block. So we are going to have to jump between sections if that helps you move, get past that. We're going to have idea brainstorming. We're going to have to move to a different location. We're going to have others help us improve quality and clarity. And then you're going to want to work with someone else because sometimes that helps us actually feel motivated to continue the work that we're doing. So, what does this look like? We need to, in order to get ourselves out of this cycle of getting stuck, we're going to start with using an outline. And if that doesn't help us, we're going to make sure we change our location. We're also going to pick a section and write it, y'all, because sometimes you can do all three of these things, but until you put words on a page, you're not going to keep moving forward. And it doesn't have to be linear. Okay, there's so much more to learn about beating writer's block. but we have time for questions for that and we can move forward. But if you've got other questions beyond this, you can always contact us here.